May I remind all of ourselves to cultivate the bodhicitta motivation, that is the aspiration seeking complete enlightenment for the benefit of all other sentient beings. And with that kind of motivation, we should all engage in this teaching. To give you the blessing of oral transmission, allow me to read about a page from this great treatise on the stages of path to enlightenment, volume number 3 in English translation.
Rāshī jāñī gyāvātē bāla lēn nāvā tēnyī mēvā shē sōng tē rāshī jī chē shē chē bē rāshī shē bā tē mā tē bār mā chē wār sōng tō bāla wā gōni mē nāvā mēvā tāng rāshī shē bē tsik tē tōng lā wā kōchū mā shōng wā lā gōni nyī mēvā shē sōng bā wā tē tā rīng Riba chuchupe tene cheba ma cheba la tingi chembe shoge song she be reba tenji ron ron ton ngowa na rangje de me mo jero de ka tene cheba tene sungye shen de rangje je ma je she ra ke tene we cheba ka yin ba tene we cheba ko na ma yin de che da ra ma je be de je wa ra sho je je ma je so she je One day, the Jewish Jover, Mesawati, General Pinzu, Georgi, Geshe, Medusa, Jemaji, Nawada, you may be Georgia, then you go to Kawashi, Pabo. Congress go Jaggy, contain with Javatu, Sunye, Rashi, Maje, so she may have go Coco color, you soon be Chavatata, Chebe, so Chevatata, Chevachi, so Madrid Shiva Legion, Hojela Jabati, Vajatilla Cheve, Mani Jella, Jenny, Raleigh County, Tom Baric, Kajitoni, Shady Boy, She, Kambatambu, Jenny Cheva, dear Maji soon. Majelugo tombo ni kambo ni pe tela kambo ni pe tela tela chewe rang xin yue ma ni xi gazal chebara ja de rang xin ji ma je bao te ta bu mi xi bi xi ce dong ti bu ma xi bi ma xi xin Tsik da tu be gashi cheba kona ni ma cheba taba koni ma cheba ushi be suji. Gindu ba shi ma be mangum khan she la ta ta ra shiba nango. Ta kiza ganzo shunzun tere kanje. Kiza ida rashi chiba ka tangbo rashi cha tai jago rashi chiba ka ni. Intijul tada mushi jengwa sa de ka ne mushi jengwa ka go ma ri khar se thai jawa ka se de ni rangshi jawa ka jawa ka cha se wa ta ko se di ko mushi jengwa di jawa de yong re do se no so si kizi rang zo ro de ro ba se di shu za de kan je se da ti zhe wa de kan zhe shu se ne ni rangshi jawa me se de da ji da jawa me se de ni je ne da je se ne da Rangyu Mizidi Takono Debatagara, Seta, take you again, Rashi Jam is the Zan Mesa called Gora. No, Seta, what you got, Seta, didn't so much. Seta, this soldier be Rashi Majava, the Jidaja, Kakashia, what that Tadan, that's something about the shares.
Geshe read from the bottom of page 187 over to page 188. One of the things that we mentioned last time is how through the 4-point analysis, we called Mushikyengo, 4 modes of analysis, we can refute intrinsic production and so forth. And now the critic comes back and said, you know what, well, you don't have to do that because you had already tried to refute intrinsic production by some other logical analysis sometime back. So 4-point analysis is just a redundant. You don't need to do that. And plus, more importantly, what they say is if you refute intrinsic production, so basically you are refuting production per se. Okay, it means you don't accept any kind of production. Okay? And so now the Prasangikas are responding to that. They said, what? This is because you are really not differentiating between what we call intrinsic production, Rangshinji Kyewa in Tibetan, and production, just Kyewa. Okay? You consider them as one and the same thing. Yeah, so that's why you have the problem, with our standpoint. Because it's understandably, as we discussed before, according to Sevatandega Madhyamigans, right, the sub-school of the middle way school, and the schools below, because they subscribe to intrinsic existence. Okay? If things exist, they must exist intrinsically. If they don't exist intrinsically, well, they don't exist at all, right? That's their kind of a position there. So for them, things must be produced intrinsically. If you say there is no, intrinsic production, then they say, well, there is no production at all. Then what else are you talking about, really, right? So it has something to do with, their own sort of philosophical positions. But the Prasangikas are saying, no, we differentiate between intrinsic production and production. Those are not one and the same thing in our understanding.
어디 런시지 마제바 제외 런시 메바 라 제와베베 차바송데 땐 제와데 런시지 마제바니 겨월제바 라 렌데 렌 그제바 라 나와데 닝메바 시송데 런시지 마제시 제베 런시시 제바 티처바 티 마트바 마제바 송도발로 고네 나와 메바다 런시 메베 세게 돈디 고주 모중에 라고네 닝메바 해 송바 와스 데르다 카르사 제가 대조하게 런시 메시드잖아 근데 런시 메바다 지다 메바니 카가 뭐야지 엄조 야고 마오르스 그래서 나와 메바세나 야 런시 메바다 메스 라바텔리아 지다 메세야 코니서 들 나와 메바스르와 다티 도서 지다 런시 메발레 다 메바니 책도 송아인자 닝 메바스 닝스 지다 셈라 세그와 제다고 거지 엄조 디가 약보 먹어세 삼보데 신조 로다 인디 니지디 송오레스 다 거지 디다 셰사데 디체도와 리포트 주주인저 다적 제와레 어디는 마다도 요걸 용도
So at the bottom of page 187, it is stated that based upon the great Indian master Chandrakirti's commentary on the 6 stanzas of reasoning, they said that there is really difference between what we call non-existence and non-intrinsic existence. Okay? Just like we talked about, there is a difference between intrinsic production and dependent production or production per se. Okay? And so Prasangika is saying, this is the distinction we are making here, but it seems like you don't have the ears to listen to this, because you keep on hearing that production is the same as intrinsic production, right? And non-intrinsic existence is the same as complete non-existence. That's how you are hearing it. And because you hear that way, so in your mind you get all things messed up, right? You're completely confused, because you don't understand the thing we are saying, and then based upon your own sort of not understanding our position, then you have your wrong notion of things.
어디 그래서 나와 메바다 이제 더다 살로 먹었다 에네 닝메바 시다로 그래서 타이 리바트라 고바도 바이지 껴와좀 고바테멘데 흉디 참조도 있었다 지금다 리바트 주인 제베 참조도 거기 끄는 유mon바다 넘버 2바 아무랑 신이 제베 껴와케는 타이도 리바트라 고바도 바이지 家中国把了对面的兄弟参照的可以归的女母把当。number 上面有些话这一代的讲究话，超过说前面呢。前面呢，这单那个这个的嘛了，成长些，他妈对吧？就说，这些现在第二个是说成的，第这边的样，第些人生意叫呢，这边人家这样，要不没弄些面对些东，开朗我说，些说不些说，这意思的，可是叫着我把明白的这意思，过年牛毛把的。叫啥？就当他浪多看见，跟这个比浪上多些给啥的哇？就说这早上的没得啥的，没把这路走。这看的是呢，第一告诉写作成的，写作成的，第一这边样，这些人生意叫呢，这边人家都有我们那些面对些的开朗说写送不写，但那人我觉。让我这边叫那同那边叫一边，这对那他也对讲啊，对讲对用的，同那边叫那个把它搞把它搞把那老问题写把他把一边，他也对让我这边是叫开朗把没啥的，啊嘞，他这个老教习的不是呗？点个，这个人下来呀，这个下。开始。
긴 춤자기면 이렇게.
라.
긴 춤자기면.
단다. 예면.
긴 대신에 배우게.
Olha, 12 bem. Não. Dirija agora. Dirija. Raji me del don go jini ba che so de da ya ri ba chi ju da de ne da nge ha lo sha. De ni je ba ma je ba ti ni che be sho so che yun je ba 다 리버 주주 자외설 때 되죠 미로와 어다 때 리버 좀 통통 거는 런시드 미바 민주때 강 때니 제와 되는 송예현데 런시지 마제비 셔로 그때 때니 제와 강에 받는 제와 코는 마이는 뒤치다 마제비 되죠 버샤죠 시드 마제소 시 주는 원데 때니 원데 때니 제와 시제바 미샤오 뒤치 핀진 교화지 이제 미루서 해 다디버 줘야지 가지 지금 근데 런신 잡이서야 되다 때니 잡이서야 돼 교화래 그래서 때니 잡이는 런신 잡이고 그거지 근데 런신 잡이는 때니 잡이고 잡다는 매버래로 그러와 어다 디다디 디버디디 데려도 성연 되발해야 됐다 근데 런신 면식 수요니 저런 게 런신 잡이서라 근데 때니 잡이서야 돼 근데 교화래 샤스 어디 줘야 되겠다
So the critics basically Sevatandika Madhyamikans and maybe we can think schools below. Now they are sort of debating or arguing with the Prasangika, saying that on the one hand you claim there is what called dependent production, right? Dependently produced things. On the other hand, you are refuting intrinsic production. You said those are really contradictory. And they said, you accept there is a dependent production, then you have to accept there is intrinsic production, And so there is kind of a flaw in your position. That's what it's saying. Remember that Sevatandika Madhyamikans believe in dependent arising. They believe in intrinsic existence of things. So for them, right, things exist intrinsically, and things also have a dependent nature. So therefore they said, on the one hand, you say things are dependently produced. On the other hand, you are refuting intrinsic productions. Then there is a problem in your logic. Because if you accept dependent production, you have to accept intrinsic production. Basically, just like us. That's what they say.
最把用到这么开始呢，让你们去可能是建议让你家开明是吧？现在他就让你家明了，家明是要考是吧？现在可以给你抢是可能3岁他让这个是吧？ 어디 다 쯧바듯이 다들 내들 가지고서는 제마지고 나와도 닝매비 장 겨겨데 코자라 까와 까와식 바보 강그서 코자 강땡이 제바도 숭예 현대 랑시지 마셔서 시에메바 제 고외국 고급 칼라 유지 숭비 체버타 체버 지소스现在 지소다 이제 랑시지 마제바다 지다 마제니 에 체버 체마도 까리 티레리스 그러와 다 체버 이지 디 체버 치야 되야 이제 배 지리스는 다 땡데시고레스 디다 tenju 코랑 디 시고르면 이제 랑시지 제바다 랑시지 아직바다 해 개러와 진짜 tenju 로그시는 랑시지 마제바다 지다 마제비 체버 치면도 제가 대비서 배 셰베 책 먹어시 이제 책을 더 먹어셔서 이제 나와메바다 메메바레스 제가 디베 간인도지레스 저와다 간인도다 거다 주주부터 간인 샤고로와 그래서 유자메스 디자메 받고 인스바에서 이제 거다 주부터 간인 샤로와 그래서 디 간인도 샤지레스 제가 디니 체와 샤고레스
So when the critics say that, dependent production, on the one hand, you say that dependent production exists, and on the other hand, you are refuting intrinsic production, which is called absence of intrinsic production. We find a contradiction there. If you accept dependent production, they think you should also accept intrinsic production. Okay. And now the Prasangika is saying that, I think we are not communicating with each other because we are trying to differentiate between intrinsic production and production. They are not one and the same thing. Okay? When we say that things are not produced intrinsically, you hear us saying that things don't exist at all. Okay? And that's why we are not communicating. We are saying that things don't exist intrinsically, things are not produced intrinsically, but they are produced and they do exist. But in your mind, you are translating non-intrinsic production as complete non-existence or something like that. So that's why we have a sort of a communication problem between us.
디레다 가제 다다 랑지 메제 되게 땡땡 있는 아니 가서 랑지 집에 차스 랑지 땡땡 비치스 랑지 땡땡 비치스 고거와 다 태교 그 랑지 메데 땡땡 비치스 기대지 고거와 어떤 사무직 그게 동사카가 기대지 와세 제가 랑지 메제 되게 애니 가서디 너의 여다시 동배 메다시 세야지 거지 땡땡 인생질 거 유여가자 매바드 세도 그래서 그러와 다 이네 내가 모두가 인자 이네 비게 디디 세번도 요마 디 이네 그 딱다 가서 여다시게 됐어와 여다시 제가 생각해봐도 너의 여다시와다 동배 메다시와디 tenju가 투모마이 비치지려요 봐 어때래 제가 강하게 너의 여다시 동배 메다시가 뭐지 동배 여다시야 요마로 봐 디쳐왔다 그지 혼자 다 짜외 캐리도 비게 도장 가도 저 어디 걸려야 되나
So why this is such a difficult sort of debate between them is they both are using the same reason, but they are making a completely different claims here. According to Sevatandega Madhyamikans and below, because they believe in intrinsic existence of things, the Tibetan term is called Rangshinji Yoba. Yeah? So they said that things exist intrinsically because they are dependently arisen. See that? That's the reason they use. Things, exist dependently, so therefore we claim they exist intrinsically. Am I clear with that? Now the Prasangika says, no, we say that things do not exist intrinsically because they are dependent arising. See that? So they're using the same logic to make a completely, antithetical supposition. So then they have a difficult, right, communicating and arguing with each other. And so that's why when we study in that sort of a philosophical debates, Seventh and Madhyamikans, they are, how should I say, 동배 여다세
세다 감각에 동배 여다세 가사대로 세다 데리 가제
Shengi.
那位没得是东北有的是个，
No,
是吧？
no,
他听叫个那位没得是东北有的是个，是吧？
no, no.
对的。
In other schools of thought, I mean, this is the crux of the matter where we have all these difficulties, is they say that by understanding what we call emptiness, tongba, then we can understand how you can eliminate the extreme of eternalism. Okay, by understanding emptiness, you can eliminate the extreme of eternalism. By understanding appearances, you can eliminate the extreme of nihilism. Okay, that's what the seventh and Madhyamikans and many schools below, that's what they accept. Now the Prasangikas, they kind of flip that. They said this is very unique to Prasangika standpoint, that by understanding appearances, you can eliminate the extreme of eternalism, and by understanding emptiness, you can eliminate the extreme of nihilism. See that? So because of this, kind of a crux of the matter, so they are struggling, these different positions come up, trying to understand each other.
听就这是个开始啊，那有的是啥开始呢？过点点银子，因为不吃不要嘛，是吧？已经的这个多把的明天大是呢，这已经做不到是呢，点银子，因为容易吃不要嘛，是吧？有的是的，是吧？ 但那可是东北没得是啥，可是容易东北银子。 因为有些城市刚刚听过的，上班没有也把啥子，也把没把啥子，这没这样的，让些没这影响，因为用头也在，因为这个，因为没得这个的，是吧？
So Prasangika's understanding, a kind of unique understanding, how what we call appearances, nangwa, can eliminate the extreme of eternalism is because they said, things appear to us, dependent upon their causes and conditions, right? And so which tells us that things do not exist in and of themselves, or what we call truly or intrinsically. So therefore, understanding the appearances helps us to eliminate true existence or intrinsic existence. Are you with me? Now, by understanding emptiness of intrinsic existence, then we are able to eliminate the extreme of nihilism. Because of emptiness, everything is possible. Okay? That things which did not exist before, when the causes and conditions come together, new things produce. When something happens, causes and conditions, they cease to exist, things cease to exist. So all this, arisal and cessation of things is very possible. Why? Because of emptiness of intrinsic existence. So therefore, Prasangikas say that understanding emptiness can eliminate the extreme of nihilism.
听着吧，我这听着看，电把吃吧是这下子咋了？看了对面出租吃吧，效果是吧？现在过点点日子的，这过出租拉着我是吧？现在有的菜档这不是我的效果是吧？现在他有的是，他没得啥子说，人心没这位置，一定别啥吧啥呀，这没有没吧，一定别给的浪头，刚刚用过不的，过出租人个作业呢。 过知不知道大家么？有些上当没些，有的有几没的没记住是吧？现在这个没得谁的对的。
So intrinsic existence is kind of defined as something existing in and of itself without depending upon anything else at all. Right? There is no any kind of dependent relationship. You just exist under your own right, and you don't depend on anything else at all. If such a thing exists, then according to Prasangika Madhyamikans, then we can say things exist truly and intrinsically. But they said there isn't such a thing. Okay? So when we understand that, depending upon causes and conditions, things appear, those appearances for us, then we know they don't exist intrinsically. Why? Because they are dependent on each other and causes and conditions. They are dependent upon the terms and concepts, how things are labeled by terms and concepts. So all this dependent relationship tell us they couldn't exist under their own right. They need each other. They need to depend on each other. Okay? That's what the Prasangika is talking about. And now they say that emptiness of intrinsic existence or true existence, which is the same for Prasangikas, okay, that makes everything possible. Okay, that helps us to be able to create new causes and conditions and produce new things. That helps us to destroy certain things, And so all these positive and negative things are possible because of emptiness of intrinsic existence. If things are not intrinsically existent, then everything has to stay fixed. You cannot change anything. You cannot change the good into bad, bad into the good. Nothing can be changed because that's the way it is. Okay? And Prasangika say that is not feasible. That's what we don't see.
Madhuri Shivali, Jenny Jeva, Karsa Kanshi, Kambatong, Madhuri Shivali, Jang Kanshi, Jenny Jeva, Tima, you tell a Jeran, you my Jen La Rale Kanti, Tongbarshi, Kanshi Tony, she the Pagins. She Kambatong with Jenny Jeva, but T. Majeshi, Sony, Majelu Tomba, Nikamba Nipe, tell her. Karsa. Tell a Jeran, you my, he got that the Chabar Jaw, the Ranshi Majabawas, Tirwata, there were Karsa, Kanshi Jatima, Jen, yes, the Jai in Sura. The young Joe Majesty, she don't my Jabber, she didn't sing your charava. She did Majesty, Ranshi Majabashera. That tell a Jeran, you my citizen, Ranshi Jadi almost go Segaton to a company, Nipati.
No.
Jella Ralekan the Tomber His, she dig that this your Karsa. No, you to see at the Higdoa. Jella Ralekan Tomber Tomber His, the Jella Riley is the Demartiva Yomalagora. Tony said the power in so that this said, Jenny gave that Ranshi might have said, or take it out on Melam to the Ud doors on in the power and that can say. Chijamala, this is all race.
We are on page 188. We have a quote from a sutra requested by king of Naga called Anavatapta. So the quote reads, "Whatever is produced from conditions is not produced. It is not intrinsically produced. Whatever depends upon conditions, I consider empty. One who knows emptiness is diligent." In the Tibetan word is called conscientious, conscientious, unquote. So as we interpret this passage, what it says, if something is produced dependently, means if something is produced by certain conditions, then that thing is not produced on its own. Okay, that's the understanding of it is not produced. Otherwise, it seems like contradictory. One thing you say it is produced is not produced, right? I mean, you can't be that crazy. What it means is if something is produced by conditions, then that thing is not produced on its own. Okay, it's not intrinsically produced. The second statement is very clear. It is not intrinsically produced. Okay, so when you understand that, the dependent nature of things, then you really understand emptiness. Okay? And so whoever understands emptiness, he or she is on the correct path. He or she is in the middle path. You know how you say that things exist, dependently, and they do not have intrinsic nature. When you understand that middle path, the path between the two extremes, extreme of eternalism and extreme of nihilism, then you have really understood the reality.
Because Ranji might sit up with me shaking. Sing to the Tavan Gashi. Gave a cone Magella, Temba Cone Magella, Temba Cone Mademba Shebe, Sujis. Gindum Bayu Marius, Mangum Shawa, Tawa Shiva Namos, said that thing the in the jail, Kaji Gavati Majas loved the son. And Singing Gawashi, yes, jail chest, Majas left the Queen Gawashi, yes. Said the Chita Jayomar, Ranshi, my Jawishi, Ranshi Yogres. That Ranshi mean Jayomaris. Or said that Tinibe Gendu said the end of the Mongum Shaw said that this is the son, this is over. And 电的没有的，可是他好像对话的了，
no,
是的，这样要么是的，可是中国要么的还要么的是， 我这蒙古先生他还把现在是嘛嘞，他说全部写的，
no,
因到通过希望让我说，他这样没有到的，因到他读的来是，
no,
我的看两个了， 我的这个的他用，但高压做的的就的不是高压的，我嘛在上去没些搞过是吧？
no,
他从个做用下头的好像用过，看这边人些们的这个嘛是人些有个是我这个有个什么意思？人些们的没有是那个嘛干啥？要么那个嘛是吧？
no,
他好像人些没得没的是他修是吧？
no,
现在他到他都认识，
no,
现在到他们的到他修那我是，但的现在他忙不远的吧？但的用的修不少，他感觉。
no. So here, the debate, at least on the surface, seems to be between Prasangika Madhyamikins and then Savatantika Madhyamikins and other schools below. Because Savatantika Madhyamikins and other schools below believe in intrinsic existence of things. So therefore, they said things exist intrinsically because they exist dependently. Okay? And if you refute the intrinsic existence, for them it seems like you are refuting everything that exists. Okay, so it's really not making any sense, from their point of view. So therefore, from their point of view, they think you are a nihilist. Because now you are saying nothing is produced. Because you are saying nothing is produced intrinsically, right? That's how they look at it from their position point of view. Okay? So Savatantika Madhyamikins and the many schools below within Buddhism, see, they, from Prasangika point of view, they have fallen into the extreme of eternalism, not nihilism. Because they said things exist, things have to exist, and we know things exist. They exist intrinsically, okay? They don't deny the existence of things. Are you with me? So they are eternalists from Prasangika point of view. Now, from Prasangika point of view, Hoshang Mahayanis is the one who is on the extreme of nihilism. Okay? Because Hoshang said, ultimately, nothing exists at all. Okay? Everything seems to exist for our confused mind. Really, nothing exists at all. Therefore, the Hoshang propagated what is called the philosophy of nothingness. Okay? And so that's very different from the Savatantika Madhyamikins and other schools below. Okay? They don't say nothing exists. They say things exist, okay, intrinsically. So those are the representatives of like the two extreme viewpoints from Prasangika point of view. So of these two extremes, the nihilism is considered as what we call the worst of the two. When you deny that nothing exists at all, right, then you really have fallen into the situation where it is very hard to correct it. But if you say things exist intrinsically, relatively speaking, it's kind of like a better option.
现在的成为人性来讲，我这些我人性就马结巴了工呢，也学他就马结巴。也现在少送说是，对了，他看见，他的这个学校的就来的哇，上街上给呀，那人性可的那七斤多可的马结巴是呀的忙不送的，的看的是人性马结巴了工呢，也送不进去，是他这学校的话，他的什么的其他要么他，这种是只弄的他。对自己拉的没事，非常的那个嘛是吧？的马拉松现在他，你只要嘛的，现在人些没法自己送着是吧？我的现在，但是农村不修的，上街上公巴浪是吧？你到那边买些自己来写啊，这个是人性买些不个写嘛的，知道买些写没事，写个多啊？
现在多的几嘛多看？
多人性的。
哦，人性的多了是no. So we are towards the bottom page 188, where we have a quote from Lanka Avatara Sutra, or Descent into Lanka Sutra. And so it says, Mahamati, I think Buddha is addressing a person called Mahamati, thinking that they are not produced intrinsically, I said that all phenomena are not produced. So Buddha himself make an auto commentary about, because in sutras, oftentimes the qualifying terms are dropped. So Buddha said, nothing is produced, things don't produce. So like then everyone was like, no, look at that, that's what it said, Now, this is very clear. Buddha himself commenting on his statements. Earlier, wherever I said there is no production or things are not produced, what I meant is there are no intrinsic production. Okay, so we can't get clearer than that because the Buddha himself speaks for himself.
세와 송 제와 송 고발라 돈돈지 체버 조르미지 렌양 돈지 송메지 원장 텔메지 셰웨 렌이 오니 돈노세 다다디 시든다 디베 체버지야디 단다 디책다가 랑기지 산지송아 다가랑 레드레도도스 이나다 디워 책인 송고자로 돈노 대다게니 순지 대다 탐지기 랑시메발라 윤주서 넘버즈부 순지문을 때바인라 제 순지 단나게 타톡바네 랑 파루발라 각바치다르 시베 제바데다 순진신라야 상만메발 조바힐 시바인비 케자기 거베 순지 단나게 타톡바 인데 리베네메늘라 소베 딱바시니 케이쇼시다 고바 셴지 첼라 도네 테더 수인징베 리바양 각바샤이비 셰로스 디브르 다카르사 도 드다게드사 다스다 디 수인지미는 체며 조모르 키도 수인지미는 시네 에네야 위바텍미드스 딜랜데르와 다지 랑시메와 윤주서 넘버즈베 수인지미는 때바이는 다시도 그런 에네 체며 조모르다 에네 카르사 리베체바시네 예바 메다보 디레게 제바시아디 수인지디 가르세나 되게 수인지 되게 오마베 랑시메 타니디 교육세야디 까토고 말이스르바 수인지바 문네바 땜바인라 다디게 강가 좁동접 가르세나 단다 쯔린 디제게 이네 랑시메나 메고 말이스 그러와 랑시메데 저와 테그리스 다 도도저 데라 어디 테그리스 어디 테이스 다저 수인지 따나기 타르도바 랑 파루볼라 각바시다 시비 제바드 수인지바데라 항만메바 주바 시글라 시바이비 제자가 꾸바디 수인지 따나기 타르도바 있어 시다다 수인지나 거기 남제 가서 땅주세요 말에 파좀 가서 이제 뒤에 가가 쓸야 애니 소송 주야지 다리 받당아요 말에 어때는 수인지 따나 땅주세요 다다디 동시야디 저런디 수지 따나 탈도 되래서 그렇다 거기 신질로 누효도 되래서 그렇다
단다게 디스는 일이다 가서 반대 나와도 그 디시전 총으로 가려다게
네네 다디 해봐도 다다 제르부시 저거로와 다다 룹자 콩저부터 반대 나와타만 주거로와 다디 제르부 해봐자로와 해봐잔다 디시도다 인다 다다 하장 그듯이 매야디 치야디 디츠바디게디 인 디기 베게 뇌지도 강가데 파악당나 인 따다 주거레스 어디서 거다
So Jeremiah is commenting on that statement from Sutra by Buddha himself, Shakyamuni Buddha himself, and so having kind of described the different positions and debate between all of them, and Jeremiah is saying that the fallacies that the critics point out in the Prasangika system, as a matter of fact, those fallacies really belong to themselves. You are just, and how maybe in English we can say, if we try to find fault in others, basically we are really finding our own fault in other people, right? That's the kind of logic. There's a particular logic in the Namdal, valid cognition treatises, Pramana Vardika, Geshe said, when you make all these arguments and point at the fallacies in others' position, basically all those fallacies exist in yours. It really should return to you. So that's what Jeremiah says. All the things you're pointing out in the Prasangika system, when the Prasangika says that things do not exist intrinsically, right, but they do exist conventionally, right, and you started to make all this kind of fallacies in the position, but those really belong to you, don't belong to the Prasangikas, because Prasangikas are saying intrinsic existence and existence are not one and the same thing. Non-intrinsic existence and complete non-existence are not one and the same thing. But you started to, take all of them as the same and started to argue with the Prasangikas, and all those fallacies really belong to your position.
그런 게 데려왔다 그 지하면 다 남다이라고 그러와. 시도 그 유대 시월다. 그런 너희 신의 그 유대 시하고 구미야 가까이 오면다. 로메 아니 지하면 일이 지고 로그로 메고 샤그로 봐. 시도 너 땅은 그런 가제 그게 파 수노지 강가 파도 그러와
No.
그 티레샤 다 리베 네바 라서베 딱바시니 네미노 라서 딱바시니 딱바히기 쇼시더 고바 커서 쇼시더 고바 바라 로바 고바 신실도 티다르 수지베 리바양 가바 샤이비 셰르스 오다 다다 코드레 세메 토보르베 리베 네미노 미제스니 키디니 콜도사라와 어디에 간갈레 파체와시 파타네 코로바 수그레스 거라
No.
what is it?
For example, according to the view of nothingness, okay, ultimately nothing exists. Yes, things do exist for our confused mind, but ultimately the bottom line is nothing exists at all. So therefore, there is what we call the philosophy of nothingness. But if you really look at that, the philosophers accept the view of nothingness exists. Well, if nothing exists at all, then how could your view exist, really? Because that's what you're saying. Nothing exists, but then your view exists still, everything else. So it's really not making any sense, when we look at closely. No.
걔들 키는 속을 썩봐야 걔를 텔 제바도 주바 인지 코자니 살라 런룩이 쇼메베 제바도 민주가 있잖아 니 좀도 보면이 봐니 tenjuda rangju kange tena baby kamni ene tomber euros ta de ko ta thadu de sigor ta ene chiro se jong sigor garse ne kya teni kya khelen gorwa ta ajang kya sa khelen be sigorwa se ta dise ta ya war se khelen be sa ene ko dise ta ya mar se til la re di ene ti ta di ka yin sa kharsa miju yan di jong de da 오면에 받네 텐주던 네 런주 관계 때는 베비 감네 또만 줘로서 다 런주 거기 리바스야 줘 디가 동금 있으면도 이게 버데 샴는 거기 있으면서
We're on page 189, and so mathematicians, of course, they use many different kinds of what called analytical reasonings to refute intrinsic existence, and one of which is here, as you can see on page 189, that things don't exist intrinsically, and so that's it. There are 4 points being mentioned. As I said, they are refuting a thing or intrinsic nature exists, does not exist, both exist and does not exist, neither exists nor does not exist, right? Like that. And then, of course, the followers or the proponents of the view of nothingness say, but all of those things really belong to you. Because we said nothing exists at all. So you cannot argue with us. And all the fallacies you bring up, it doesn't belong to us because our position is nothing exists. So what are you trying to tell us? But you are the one who said things exist dependently, things this, that, right? So you got to deal with that issue, right? The critics saying, not us, because nothing exists for us.
that's the kizi domas be joys tere koron da jangbe de kyang ga ke bele ngonzu ke ne ya kyang ga me ba yang denge dugja zgo ra ta de koron de kyang ga me ra ta
No, there.
me ra
No.
ti ya jangbe kyang ga ke me ge de dugja ze kyang ga ke le ge de ya ga zgo ra ko
No.
shida ta de ta de me yang ge kyang ja ya mar ba
No, there.
shida ta de oman jibe ka ze ka 치료 중국 사람들 요는 요거 쉬나 얘네 치료 다다 받자가 왜서 얘네 형제들 뭐 가요 때 가고 말 왔어 찍바래 왔어 중국에 ಬಂದು 찍바세 얘네 매번 찍바라 어쨌든 제발 줘야면 내가 계속 찍 넣어서 그때 뒤차고 나도
No. So one of the debates that we have seen before is, where we say, we go with the position that things exist for confused mind, okay? And if they do exist for confused minds, now the question we can ask is, do they exist or not? Is that a good enough existence, right? If they exist for confused minds, can we still say they exist, and if we say yes, then, in Buddhism, how we refute many philosophical positions of like non-Buddhists, primarily Hindus, right? For example, one of the ideas which we have seen before is the Atma. According to Buddhists, there is no such thing as Atma, or in English translated as permanent soul. Yeah. But one could claim, or Hindu said, that Atma exists for confused mind. Right? If that's good enough, then Atma should exist. Then all the things they claim should exist, because the logic makes sense here, But that's not the case, right? How can we say, in our system, we accept that things exist because they exist for confused mind, but in other people's system, they say things exist for confused mind. No. That doesn't work, right? You just can't have a double standard. It has to be the same, okay?
Shiva, what you saw, Mushika, Goba, Nushi, the Miro, Dembane, Shiva Gobo, you may say, Gobo, you but the Mebasi, Otikani, any today, I am in the Tayomar says, Koshiro. Shiva Gobo, you may saw ye, Mushika Goba, Nushi, the Miro, Dembane, Mushiko, Nushi, Miro, Ome Shoni. Shongnamni, Govo, Rashi Yoba, the Meva, the Nika maybe Mushitamji Galas, Tirakoji, Govo, Rashi Yoba, and Tanya the Meva, Nika Imba, Nika Maiba Tonta Matavasi, Nika Maiba Yorwa.
Okay, the collection again, Ranshin Yoba again.
Rashi Yoba, then the Meva,
Tanya Magic.
Nika Imba, Rashi Yoba, then Nika Yomara, then Nika Maiba Yorwa, the Nika Maiba Tonta Motova, Bushin goes then Terry.
No, sir. And so the 4-point analysis in Tibetan called Mushi Kyengo, right? We called refuting production through 4-point analysis, Mushi Kyengo. Okay, those who are learning the Tibetan. So one of the 4-point analysis we talk about is that Rangshin Yoba, things exist intrinsically, one, okay? And things do not exist even conventionally, okay? 2, things are both, right? They exist intrinsically, but they don't exist at all, kind of that position, which is the both. And then the neither, right? So those are the 4 positions. Things exist intrinsically, things don't exist at all, even conventionally, okay? But things are both, and things are neither, okay? So those are the 4 points, of analysis.
Termandi Church maybe Ribeta you go with Casa. Casa. Shibadingo de Casa. Gala Termandi Church maybe Ribeta you go, young and then not them, but the global in the wrong good to go on it. Deba Yinga. 이 가운데 여번 대장 고라 도시민의 거는 당연히 두고 보면 다 딩게한테 노래사리 단데 땅마디 무시시가 세야지 가지 되어래도 뭐 이런 거 여대요 다 간지 게 당게 세야돼 너무 해야 되더라 가지 기타 시도들 무시정고 어떻게 쪼아가 가도 그랬다 너는 돈을 쪼아가 미리 당연히 쪼아가 말아 어디 가레스 어디 가서 다 뒤는 뭐디 쪼아잖아요 말세로와 뒤면은 쪼아세잖아요 말세 어디 딱 가지 되버되버되더라 당게 해야 돼 가지 너무 루트 해야야
가지기 괜찮다 무시정고 돈에 괜찮아 까버도 되고요 말하게
무시정고디 까장사 무시정고 롱루 무시정고 리바셰요로와 어디 오면 리베 종료요로와 뒤요다 뒤가 강가 까사래서다 뒤는 뭐디 쪼아잖아요 말다
도다는 야가 요말 용식 말쓰고
그러면 쪼아세잖아요 말이죠 오면 종료는 무시정고 리바디 까자 뒤는 쪼아디 기본 뭐디 쪼아잖아요 말이죠
So this 4-point analysis, according to the critics, what they say is that when you use the 4-point analysis to refute, right, production, they think, production per se. Also, according to Pasengigas, we are really not refuting production per se. We are refuting intrinsic or ultimate production. Okay, so they think that we are using this logical system analysis in order to refute, production in general. So then they said that then you cannot talk about production at all because every kind of production must be inclusive within those 4, right, analysis. So when you, refute all the 4 points of analysis, then nothing is left. So then you can say that something is produced. That's what the critics say. But according to the Prasangikas, he said, we are not refuting the conventional production or the production per se. We are refuting ultimate or intrinsic production. So the 4-point analysis only refutes intrinsic production, but not the the conventional production. So again, that's the big difference between the two.
디타 알이 다들 희교를 찍시는 양 코피지 코자 처음이죠. 무식증고세한테 가지게 되어 랑로 이가 되고 봐. 다 가지고 무식증고 그 가운데선 타니 가지고 그랬어. 랑로게 무식증고 내 맞춰가 그러면 지금 타니 여가고 뭐 되다.
I think both critics and the Prasangikas accept this 4-point logical analysis. Okay, this logic works for both. Okay. But the way the critics is thinking is if you use this 4-point analysis which we accept, then you are refuting production in general, and then you are still talking about things are produced dependently. That doesn't make sense to them. They say, because that's not working. But according to the Prasangikas, said, no, we are not refuting the production in general. We are refuting a particular kind called intrinsic or ultimate production. So according to our system, through this 4-point analysis, when we establish there is no intrinsic production, no ultimate production, okay, then we still assert there is the other kind of production, the dependent or the conventional production.
되겠다. 되는 걸 때마다 뭐를 이스 니를 랑 우체베 뭐는 대만 인저 니 가운데야 여보 대장 고라 동시 네베 뭐는 타이도 거 많이 놓으시 다들 야다 무슨 거 리바디 뭐를 야비게 디스거라 가르사 제가 뭐서는 여발라 뭐 주고 가지고 뭐 다디 제가 강갈 주고 봐. 제가 딱 뭐 정시 주발라 뭐 자주고지 제가 타이도 여발라 뭐 주고 봐. 제가 뒷뭐들 야 정시 주고 뭐서는 어디 가 그랬어. 다 제가 용계 거 방을 동시에 강박 가와서 근데 또 올라서 뭐 되게 시는 네 가고 말했어. 오메르 가고 말했어.
I think the another kind of matter that I think complicates all this argument refutation is the use of the term called nguebo, which is usually translated as thing. Okay, but the thing can also mean the thing, conventional things, such as pillars, houses, you, me, whatever, all the things that conventionally exist. Or the thing could also refer to intrinsic, existent things. Okay. And so therefore, when you use the same term which to mean two different things, and then that complicates the matter. Okay? And according to Prasangikas, when we refute thing, which they think is the intrinsic thing, okay, we are not refuting the conventional things. We assert, as a matter of fact, houses exist, pillars exist, the vases exist, all other things exist. We are simply refuting inherently existent things. But according to the critics, the things meant intrinsic things. So now they're thinking, by refuting things, you are refuting intrinsic things. Then what exists now? Really nothing, So that's how, again, we see the debate between the two.
어디야? 그래서 고바 마이는 고바 매방 드마치나 랑우 주베 의미 되는 인데 의미 양고고 대신에 되게 고바 의미 니가 인자리양 고고 스다지 고바 매바셔야 돼. 의미 지당 가서야 저 고바도 고바 매바셔지 도지 될래야 인 디신 디바이스야 서 샤거로 와. 시다 다 고바 매바시디잖아. 의미셔야 되시. 될래야 의미 될래야 인 가르사 의미는 드마치 나 랑우 주베 인 의미셔야지다. 지당 의미셔 니 샤거로 와. 제가 랑우 주베 의미도 가그래서 와. 지당 의미도 가고 말서 의미 레디어로 와. 제들 시다 대신에 된다 거 의미 인자야. 드마치 드마치 데르와 가르사 랑우 주베 인 의미 다 의미 임바도 많이 니까지 되기는 이시 시작으로 와. 그와 때는 매와시 랑우 주베 거버시 그와 드마 의미시 랑우 주베 맞아 의미시 니가 임바 니가 뭐 시작으로 야 되기는 시작으로 와. 디시가 될다 타마들라 니가 많이 받대 이 통도 거르미 니가 많이 그때 열어 와.
When we think about phenomena, by definition, we mean something exists. Okay? It can be classified in many different ways, and one of the classification is called phenomena can be categorized into two types, things and non-things. I know it's a bad English, but the right, things, and that which are not things, we call non-things, to be simple. Okay, okay. And within the things, we can talk about, are there such things as intrinsic things, intrinsically existent things, or just the usual kind of things? The same thing on the other side, we can say, are there intrinsically existent non-things, or just conventionally existent non-things? You can talk about, right? I mean, we can look within each classifications. And according to Prasangikas, on either side, there is no such thing as intrinsically existent things or intrinsically existent non-things. No such thing as. But conventionally, there are things, houses, you, me, all. Conventionally, there are what we call non-things, such as we call the space. Okay? For example, the Tibetan word is the namka is considered as a non-thing. Okay? By using the 4-point analysis, according to Prasangikas, whether we apply them to the things or the non-things, what we should remember is we are simply refuting the intrinsically existent, right, nature of things or intrinsic nature of non-things, if you will. But we still assert conventionally things and non-things do exist. Okay, that's the Prasangikas position. Now, according to critics, so things equal to intrinsic things, non-things equal to intrinsic non-things, because that's why the debate goes between the two.
니가 많이 봤어야 될 당기 러히 여봤을 될 가져게 와서 그 자자가시 다 때는 매왔을 때는 야 가져게 와 자고 말아 다 니가 이버들 가져게 와 자고 말아 니가 이거 요 말아 다 니가 많이 비어라 여기 니가 많이 비차러 와 다들 돈다 버 세자로 와 니가 많이 봐라 뭐 좋은 거 뭐지 뭐지 니해 봐 니가 많이 봐 돈다 봐 맞아 봤어 돈다 봐 좋은 거 와 어디 보고 디 쳐봐도 맞아 셰다다 비지들 고름 좀 넣지 배셔려 딜 제대로 딜 bom바로 디 따샤로 셰다다 쇼탐지 셰지 러시 주바다 모두 니가 이마 타스 니가 뭐이 베시 니가 뭐 동서 모두 디 동서 맞아 셰 니가 뭐이 좀 샤고로 임베시스现在得了康健，他们这个那连套精神的，某些有些看起来学我的学那的，就是感觉像我这些。
So here the thing, when we look at the 4-point analysis, number one we said, things exist intrinsically, right? Number two we said things don't exist, meaning don't exist at all, right? Even conventionally, that's the understanding. And then the number three is both, right? Intrinsic existence and non-existent. And the fourth one is which is neither. Okay. Now, from Prasangika point of view, when we look at this 4-point analysis, there is no such thing as intrinsically existent. Right? That's what they're trying to refute, isn't it? And the things don't exist at all. We don't have to qualify it with anything else. Don't exist. Yeah. That which is both, again, which is impossible. There is no such thing as that is both intrinsically existent and non-existent, right? So we don't really talk about that. The fourth point, it is possible. There is something that is neither, okay? So this is where we debate. If there is something that's neither, could it exist ultimately or intrinsically or not? So according to Prasangika, by using the logics, they said that's what we're refuting. We are refuting the ultimate nature or the intrinsic nature of this fourth possibility, that which is neither. Okay.
that 되게 비지 찾고 싶어. 다 지금 사카 보이는데 진짜 컨디션이 칼칼 시험을 하고 말씀을 왔대 드리대 하고 그러다.
Geshe says, yeah, of course, these are all really very difficult kind of points and things. It takes a lot of us to kind of education and familiarity with the different systems and the debate logic and everything. So with slowly, it might make better sense for us. Otherwise, it's really tough. We're dealing with very tough and difficult topics and logics here. So with that, we'll stop there, and the traveling mic is over there. So